Welcome to clip 2 of the Functional Anatomy handout. Just so you know, we're going through and picking up on rotational movements on page 2 of your handout. Just also be advised that I left page numbers for you, highlighted in yellow, so you can follow along with your trail guide, and I did make mention of that earlier. Let's now talk about rotational movements. Rotational movements are those movements that occur along a longitudinal or vertical axis. The movements include internal rotation, external rotation, and it's around a vertical axis. So when you think about that, the best one I can do with the video here is internal rotation of the shoulder, where the glenohumeral joint actually rotates inward, or it rotates outward in an external way. So internal rotation, external rotation. So let's go over some of these. Internal rotation means medial or inward, turning the anterior surface of the body part towards the midline. So if you start in an anatomical position and you turn your fingers or your thumbs so it's actually going to touch your hip bones, towards your hip bones or your femur, then that would be internal rotation. Okay, but again, it happens at the glenohumeral joint. External rotation is lateral or outward movement, the turning of an anterior surface of a body part away from the midline of the body. So that would mean that you would rotate your glenohumeral joint so that your thumbs and hands are actually facing the walls or sides of you. There's also neck and trunk rotation. I will make mention of this in your book so you can have rotation of the neck and the trunk. Okay? And then also scapular rotation. There will be an extra video on this, and we'll be talking about this later in the series of video clips that you will be watching over the first 4 weeks. Scapular rotation, though, I do want to state, it is scapular rotation of the scapula bone. If there is not rotation of that bone, you will not have adequate shoulder movement. To complete ADLs, IADLs, you're going to see major restrictions in range of motion and strength. The next part of it now, we're going to be starting on the shoulder. The shoulder movements include the humerus, clavicle, scapula, which is on the posterior side of your body, glenohumeral joint. So it deals with those 3 different bones. Okay, so let's talk about it and I'll demonstrate each one. Shoulder flexion is actually flexion of the shoulder. I'll do it in 2 planes. Shoulder extension would be behind me. Protraction of the shoulders, I will do in 2 different planes. So protraction is if you round your shoulders forward. Protraction. The next one will be retraction, or stand up straight like your mother taught you. Okay. Then retraction. Internal rotation of the shoulder, or medial or lateral, or medial rotation, internal rotation or medial rotation. So it takes from anatomical position, remember our starting point, and it moves that body part anteriorly inward towards the body. External rotation would be taking the body part and then externally rotating it outward away from the plane of the body. So there it is with the shoulder. Abduction of the shoulder would be movement away from the body, abducted away. Adduction would be adding it to the body. Horizontal abduction, or AB and adduction would be, here's horizontal AB. So if you start anatomical position here, for abduction, you start in this position and go outward, abducting it away. Conversely, horizontal adduction, you would be adding it. Think about adding it to the midline. Shoulder elevation would be the I don't know syndrome. So elevation of the shoulder. So if you can see it from the side, elevation. Next would be depression. I have trouble with this one because I can't depress very well, but depressing or bringing your shoulders downward. From neutral, downward. Neutral, downward. We have a little bit more in this clip to cover. The elbow. The elbow deals with the humerus, the ulna, and the radius. Okay? So remember, the humerus, the ulna is your pinky side, and the radius is the thumb side, if you remember. So the elbow, simply flexion. So elbow flexion, elbow flexion. From flexion, we go to extension. From flexion, starting point, this would be extension. So again, flexion, that would be elbow flexion. The starting point for extension would be flexion into elbow extension.